All right, hi everyone. So product innovation through user insights. I think we all know for sure that we obviously drive product innovation through user insights. Like my boss would come to me and say, we need to be data driven, we need to be customer focused as we look at what features we want to build. But one thing we all know, that's fundamentally the million dollar question for any product leader, any growth leader in the room here is, we want to make sure we build the right things. But you ask any one of us here, we all know as well that we have many instances where we have not built the right things. And how I want to look at it, I ask every one of you to think back, maybe of all the features or the product releases that you've had, through your time here in your current company or previous companies, and they can all sort of be summarized as usual into a 2x2 matrix, right? We have on one dimension how good the feature actually is for us, and then on the other dimension we have how good we thought the feature would be. And obviously, when we look at our innovation process today, we want everything to be in the top right quadrant. We want everything to be the true positives. We knew it was good. We built it, and it was good. We also know that in a lot of product teams, we get a lot of requests from different business leaders. We get it from markets, and they tell us, okay, these things are important to us. Please build them. So these are things that we also have to deal with as part of the decision-making process. And what we want to do is get it right. We want to make sure that the things that do not matter for the business, we do not eventually build them. And those are the true negatives. We want to make sure that's done right. One interesting perspective about this is, depending on the organization, you might have a lot of stuff in the top right quadrant. You might also spend a lot of time dealing with the second quadrant as well, because you might actually have to go back to a lot of people and say, this huge backlog of 100 or 200 things, we don't want to build those. So the justification, the amount of time you spend on product insights, user insights to say no to stuff, that can also be quite a big factor for you as well. And of course, these are the two elements that we spend time on. We also have, of course, the other two boxes. So I'll go to the one on the bottom right first. We have the false positives. Obviously, we want to prevent the instances where we know that there are shitty features which we built. And then at the same time, the other side, we have the false negatives, which are essentially good features that we missed. And I'll put it down that actually a lot of these harkens back to the user insights that we get. What we want to make sure, especially with the false positives, we want to make sure that the user insights that we consider are essentially the right ones. We want to make sure we don't interpret them wrongly. And in the other case, where we miss good features, actually that's the harder one. Very often we spend a lot of time validating the things that we're thinking about, but it's very easy to miss the golden opportunities and let the competitors build these things first. So that's something that is also very key. How to translate the insights that we get, be able to cut through all the noise and identify what is this one thing that will resonate with a certain group of customers, or really turn our product to be fundamentally different from our competitors. So taking this entire space, think about your business, think about the daily problems that you face. Where exactly do you spend a lot of time on? Where exactly do you run into a lot of challenges today? So today, I want to share a bit of my humble perspective, how we look at it, how I've encountered all these problems, the learnings from past failures, and share with you through various case studies how we manage it at foodpanda. So common pitfalls in the innovation process, and this is what we always get when we are trying to justify the product features that we want to build. Very often we see cases where we rely on gut feel. We also have the hippo knows best, where the product leader says, or the business leader says, oh no, this is what I have seen studying the market for 3 to 5 years. This is essentially what our customers tell me every day. And the last case, also increasingly common, when you have a very long backlog of product features, people start to game the backlog. They start to say, oh, actually this feature is really important, and they can come up with all sorts of data business cases that say, oh, this is a $100 million problem. It's going to be 10% of GMV. But ultimately, is it so? That's where user insights, of course, help to do all of this. The problem about the user insights, why do we, despite every organization trying our best to solve it, why is it that we still encounter these problems? And that's because it's similar to what my bosses always tell me and what I tell my staff. We want the user insights, we want it yesterday. And that's the truth. We need it when we want to make the decisions. And very often, it's a case where if we don't invest in getting the user insights in advance, if we don't invest in making sure that we consolidate all of these things, we share it with everyone, we're always thinking about this, very often when eventually we need to make a decision on a particular problem, when we need to make a particular design that needs to go out to the market, very often for these, we're making them with insufficient data. And that's what happens when you want to build good products and that doesn't really come to pass. So on that, I'm just going to land a very simple first point, which is essentially always invest, regularly invest in a multi-layered insight stack. I wouldn't go into too much details about what they are. We have obviously qualitative insights, which are like focus groups, customer surveys. Harriet mentioned just now about the you check in with all the different personas, different types of customers, understand what they're facing, especially in the natural environment. That's especially important. So that's qualitative insights. We also want quantitative insights, working together with the data teams to regularly map out, problems, for example, in the conversion journey, problems which they encounter with different products in the app, different features, different pages. These come together using, the whole wealth of data that we have. Other parts that we also obviously do would be, industry trends. Spend a lot of time looking at our competitors within the industry, see what they're building, see adjacent industries as well, see what they're adopting, how things are changing. And then, of course, the macro trends as well. Things like AI, things like changes to self-driving cars, self-driving delivery. At the same time, labor changes also going to be very, I would say, influential on the food delivery industry for us as well. Yeah. So, yes, the first point, invest in a multi-layer insight stack. But of course, despite that, you can collect all this information. Not all information is equal, and that's the next point that I want to land as well. Very often, we need to triangulate very carefully across all the various insights to make sure we make the right call. There are essentially, I would say, sort of three types of general information about customer behavior. This is primarily most relevant in the B2C space. The first one, of course, being observed behavior. It's the most accurate because you see them actually going through that difficulty, or you see them actually finding this product market fit or customer product fit that you have when they're using the app. That's the best, but it's also the hardest to get really a lot of data on this, because usually you only get it on a one-to-one setting. At the same time, you also have inferred behavior that also takes the data side. But the problem, of course, is dependent on data availability. It also can have a bit of noise, because that's also based on past data. It's not based on future data. So whether that's transferable is also a bit of a problem. And then the last one, very often we use that the most, the stated behavior. You go to customers, you check with them on surveys before. You test, you do a mock-up on the product, you do some wireframes, and you go to them and you show them that. And then you understand from the customer whether they do like it or not. The problem here is, one thing that I'll share a bit more in the case study is very often stated preferences really do not correlate with the reviewed preferences. And that's something that we need to be very careful about, because what they tell you very often is not what they actually want. So one of the programs that I used to run in foodpanda is the loyalty and gamification program, and that's something that I would say I'm deeply passionate about. I think there's a lot of fun that you can have in this space. And really, fundamentally, of course, about this, what we really wanted to do, we wanted to redesign it, we wanted to improve it to make sure that we engage our customers, we drive fundamentally more orders for the business. And what we wanted to do, so this comes from our brilliant creative team. They came up with this concept, and of course, this was before we validated the customers. You give the creative teams an idea, they can take it to town. And they came up with this. They were like, oh, let's make panda gochi. So obviously, a lot of wireframes, designing what it'd be like, taking our beautiful PowerPoint and putting it with different screens, making sure that, there's ways to interact with him, make sure that, as you make more orders, as you come to the app more, he grows up, you feed him, you buy food. So a lot of funky ideas that we had from there. But of course, yeah, we had to validate with customers first. And I think that's where, when we talk to them, the very first instance, of course, stated preferences doesn't equal to reviewed preferences. We knew that. We tested it with them. We got their feedback. They said, obviously, they liked it. I think that's no questions about that. But we asked, of course, the deeper questions. Okay, what do they actually want when they're looking for food? Actually, nobody looks for a panda gochi when they want to have food. They're just hungry. They just want to eat. At most, from a reward standpoint, it's a bonus. It's not anything more. They don't want anything where the rules are too complex and you got to spend too much time on it. No. So in that game will be too much. So unfortunately for our creative teams, yeah. We also spoke to them in focus groups, and then they shared, yeah, it's still a meaningful program. They still find that, if you have something like that, I would still want to use foodpanda more. I would still feel more for the brand compared to our competitors, which I wouldn't name. They also said, yeah, add a feature, if you can give bonus points, that's all great. So there was still interest in loyalty mechanics. So we evaluated it. We made some simpler changes. We made it easier to understand, and then of course we rolled out a new version. So it evolved more into like a stamp card program, and within that we actually created this space within the app where they could earn points, they could collect start stamp cards. When you make orders, then you can progress in your journey as a foodpanda user, at the same time collect more cool stuff on the platform as well. But unfortunately, I think one of the things that we eventually encountered after 6 months plus of testing, go to market in various markets, we found actually participation rate not as high as what we wanted. I think very common for loyalty programs. Less than 25% of our monthly active users were using the program. We had limited GMV uplift for the entire platform, and that's taking the uplift only for those users. And at the same time, I think the investment that we were putting in, not just for the program itself, but also for the incentives that we funded, the rewards that we paid for, that was lower than the platform average. So I think the part that we recognize is, eventually when we look back at the journey of validation about why we decided to invest in this program, why did we decide to design the program this way or not, it was still a lot of confirmation bias. Yes, we agreed, Panda Gochi is a bit too much. But, when we talk to customers, I think we didn't come up with a firm enough framework to really identify, is this exactly what would drive outcomes for the business or not? And that's a learning that eventually we took back and we said, okay, actually in cases where we're designing new programs, when we really want to take everything, make sure that, there is this fit with the customer in each of the individual markets, design it exactly to what it would be. We need to do something what we call conjoint analysis, and that's something that we do a lot more these days, where you take a customers base of customers, but instead of asking them questions which they would give the kind of answers that you're looking for, but you give them essentially a trade-off. You pose to them a problem where they have to potentially lose something, and when you frame the problem that matter, you can actually tease out the real value that you're providing to the customer a lot more strongly. So the basis that we looked at was, okay, we knew that in the current situation, we were also investing in vouchers. So if I was launching a loyalty program and I took away your voucher, what does that mean to you? And that's something that is essentially the true test, whether this would actually drive engagement or not. So that's why we tested, okay, between instant gratification via voucher versus delayed gratification from a loyalty program, does that actually does that actually make you more loyal to my platform? And the second part, of course, then, you will want to validate, out of loyalty programs, how many various ways could you design it? Do we design it based on, points per spend, which is a very common program, airline miles sort of work this way, Or do we do like milestone rewards, where you really need to be very active on the platform before you start to earn rewards? And then lastly, of course, before we go to launch, there's something that we can do, test out what's the reward type. And of course, if you go to launch and you have a bit of a product which has A/B testing components built in, it's very easy to validate these things as well. So yeah, definitely, I think the learning from this case study is really triangulation across various data points, and really it's about taking these data points throughout the life cycle of a product, from the beginning of the product, from conception stage, all the way to the first stages as you're building it out, and then eventually even at launch, you also want to constantly validate whether this product is the right fit, right design for the customer. So that's right. And maybe the third point, I'm going to bring up this case study that we have. It's probably more of a positive point compared to the last point, and it stems from this opportunity that we have thought about for years at foodpanda. We actually struggled with this. All our user insights, they always talk about, I'm just this one person at home, and I really want to get food delivery. It's sweltering hot outside. I want to order food. I don't want to go out. But how can I do so? So this eventually culminated, of course, in a Meal for One program that we launched. But essentially, what we realized about this group is solo users never like to order food delivery because it's too expensive. And it's fundamentally delivery cost, where you get a rider to deliver to you, is just too expensive for one person. We see that due to the design of the overall business model, we make sure that you need to order a certain basket size before you can qualify for a lot of the incentives that we offer. So you want to get free delivery, for instance. Even for our subscription program, generally you need to order like $15 in Singapore, which is quite high for an average meal we want to have on a day-to-day basis. So as a result, we wrecked our heads over the years how to serve these customers in a profitable manner. It took, I would say, quite a bit of the user insights to eventually solve it. What we did at first was to make sure that we got really clear personas on this. And it sounds simple in that we mention things here that you really understand about the user. Like, for example, okay, it's usually young professionals, it's usually a certain age, they have no time for meals, so they're very keen to order. Very often, because it's one person, you don't want to spend very much. You might have decent spending power, but you don't want to spend too much on the order. And essentially, what they also care about is, faster delivery, and what they're sometimes willing to trade off is that they're willing to order in advance. So putting these things together, actually what we realized was in each of the markets, there is this price point that if you go under, then people are very happy to order. In Singapore, it's definitely not $15. So where we eventually landed at was $10. $10, get a delivery, food to you, and I think there would be a lot of people who go for it. So what we did at the start, we decided, okay, this was a certain price point that we want to go for. We launched it in the various markets. And one of the things that we used the user insights for to make a fundamental change to how the business operates was that we realized that since people wanted convenience, since these customers were able to schedule their food in advance, and they also wanted, they were happy to trade off on certain things. They didn't want to spend so much, so they wouldn't expect really good quality food. But in a lot of our markets, we actually have local food, which would always be a certain price point. You would also be willing to have that for a simple meal at home, and this was essentially the type of product that made sense. They also didn't care actually too much about choice, because usually on food, if you're ordering for big group of friends, you care about the quality of food that you're getting. You always order from a very good restaurant because you're hosting friends, for example. But if you're ordering just for yourself, actually anything that's good, be it fast food or a simple chicken rice or something, that fits the bill. So actually from that, what we realized was when we built this feature, the curation of whichever items and vendors you could order from was actually critical. The other part that actually made the whole business model work was actually that if we constrain the number of restaurants that you could order from such that they were only those that were of a close enough vicinity to you, we could actually, firstly, make sure that the vendors were attractive to you because you got your food fast. But at the same time, we made the whole business model work because actually the riders don't have to drive as long a distance to get the food. So actually we're paying the riders less and the price of the food actually dropped. So it was a combination of these two things that made actually the entire business model work. So we validated it across markets and we realized that, oh, there's actually a significant demand. And one thing that we noticed was that people who like to order this meal for one type of solution, they tended to only order it. So it was actually quite incremental for us as a business. We got new users, which we would never have gotten before. And it was actually not very cannibalizing. What I meant by that was we weren't actually making people who were ordering big amounts of food as a result move to lower baskets. They weren't doing so because it was a fundamentally different segment that we never quite touched on before. So it had very strong uptake in our target segments, and we saw it especially in a lot of cities that we operate in. Hong Kong, Manila, Singapore actually see quite a lot of interest in this. And yes, eventually, of course, as we rolled this out, we started to adjust a lot of the parameters. We adjusted the prices that we set across markets. We made sure they were competitive. We also adjusted the various the MOVs. We adjusted the delivery radius as well. And essentially, View for One in most of our cities, we actually do see a decent size. And these users are both profitable as well as driving incremental orders for our business. So as I think the summary from this case study is really just about, we exercise creativity in how we examine the user insights. We don't look at it as just one dimension. And eventually when we talk about launching it as a product feature, it's really about 2 to 3 iterations to get it right. Because what we had to make sure at the start was, it's not just about the price, it's also about the delivery distance, it's also other parameters, working together with the vendors to make sure that the features are well designed. Yeah. So that's what I have for today. So the key takeaways are, as I mentioned, investing in a multi-layer insight stack. That's essentially what every product organization should make sure we do from yesterday. Triangulation across all our various data points and insights, and then eventually exercising creativity and validating across the product design journey. Cool. Yes, and essentially with that, we should be able to improve the hit rate in our innovation process. Yeah. Cool. All right. Thank you, everyone.